chat. This evening we have, we're going to call him an entrepreneur, fitness head, fitness junkie, triathlete, endurance athlete, marathon runner, all around nice guy. If I forgot anything, I'm sure you'll fill me in here in a couple of seconds. But Shane Finn, welcome, good evening, and thank you for coming on. Hope you're
Thanks.
doing very well.
Thanks, very much appreciated, man. I think the only thing you forgot from the bio there was Kerry man, proud Kerry man.
Kerry man.
that should be above all else. But
proud,
I'm doing good.
Proud
good.
Eagle man.
Yeah, doing good. Strange times, but look, it's I'm okay. Family are healthy. I'm healthy. The exercise limit got moved up to 5 kilometers. That was massive for me, and look, it could be a lot worse. It's changed a couple of my plans and stuff for 2020, but I was supposed to be all over the world this year, but no, it's put me at home, and that's okay as well. It slowed me down a little bit, which was probably due as well. But no, look, it could be a lot worse. It could be a lot worse. But no, great to be here, and thanks for having me on. I much appreciate it.
Yeah, no matter. And as you said before, we just come on air there. One door closes, another door opens. So I think that's a big factor for everyone at the moment. But Shane, when I had one of our other colleagues, Killian Keane, on there recently as well, I suppose the first thing we did to break the tension and break the ice a little bit was just show a little, I suppose, a funny photo. So you'll see it come up in your stream there. So there's me and two fresh-faced individuals back in 2013, I'm going to say.
Oh God, that was it. 2013, was it? That's a long time ago, man.
It was October 2013.
A long time ago.
That was our graduation photo from Image Fitness. So.
What was the name of that nightclub again?
Crystal or something. Crystal or
Crystal. That was it. Yeah, that was good crack.
All I remember saying is it was across the road from McDonald's. So.
that we knew that was there anyways.
But that was it. So we'll take that off now, fine and quickly, so that come off.
You could have picked a lot worse. No, I'm not too upset with that. That could have been a lot worse.
Exactly. You should have seen the picture we put up with Killian. So poor Killian got an awful doing there last week.
That's all right.
So Shane, come here. As I said, thanks a million for coming on. I suppose the whole purpose of bringing you on this evening was, I suppose, with your background with endurance sports and endurance and being an endurance athlete, you've had to overcome your fair share of mental demons. I suppose Killian spoke about mental health last week, but this is a step on from mental health. This is just the voices that go on in your head, I suppose, when you're pushing your body to the absolute limits. So I suppose what we're looking to do this evening is just pick your brain a little bit.
Sure.
See if you have any tips and advice just to help people push through that glass ceiling and help them push on to the next level again. So Shane, in I suppose 60 seconds or less, because I put Killian on the spot last week as well, tell us a little bit about Shane Finn from your side.
60 seconds. If you gave me 60 minutes, I'd be like, all right, perfect. 60 seconds is a tough one. All right, give it a crack. I got into endurance and ultra endurance by complete another accident. I was a GA player, footballer, still am at heart, I suppose. Got in just basically to raise money for my cousin Mary, who has a condition called spina bifida. I just got off the phone with her before this call. We have a Monday catch up every Monday. And I was only 18 when I started running, I suppose. Next week will be my 10-year anniversary of training, so and doing crazy stuff really. So I started off just literally to raise money for charity. It was never going to be a business, or it was never going to be a brand, or it was never going to be anything. It was just to raise money for charity. I went from running my first marathon in Dingle in 2010, and I still say everything I've done to this day, that's the hardest thing I've done, to doing 12 marathons in 12 days, 24 marathons in 24 days, biking and running across America over 36 days, which mentally there was a lot of demons there, and raising nearly just under 300 grand in the last couple of years for Spina Bifida Ireland. So that's a snapshot of what I'm about. I'm just, at the end of the day, behind it all, I'm a normal lad. I'm from a small town in Kerry. Grew up like every other lad in the rural Ireland did, I suppose, playing football, going to school, and that was all that really mattered. And I suppose when I did my first marathon, it was like somebody hit me across the back of the head with a sledgehammer. Like I opened up, I suppose, a different can of worms and a different angle, and my life took a completely different turn. And I'm very grateful I took that turn, So I just wish more young fellas around Ireland would run a marathon before they turn 18, because I tell you one thing, it'll teach them a thing or two. So, no, suppose that's what I am. I've turned it into my life now. I'm that guy who runs around the place, and 10 years later, the neighbors no longer think I'm a bit of a weirdo. They think it's strange now if they don't see me out, So, no, look, it's all good. And at the end of the day, Barry, I'm enjoying it. I have fun. I think anybody that knows me, if I'm not having fun, I won't be around for very long, So I got to be enjoying it, got to be having fun.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I suppose, Shane, I'm going to pull you up straight away. That was 80 seconds. So,
I knew I'd got over it. But I was like, it's close. But I don't know. The starting point there was floating. I don't know where you were timing me from. I wasn't too far away.
You're going to find that for the next half an hour, Shane, there's going to be a series of peaks and troughs. So it's going to be like Mount Brendan down below in Dingle. It's going to go up and it's going to go down very, very quickly. So don't worry about it. We're going to keep it flowing as best we can.
Nice one.
But Shane, I'm going to, I suppose, just picking a couple of bits that you picked up or that you spoke about there. So just picking up on a few things. So I suppose I know you and I know your background, I know your story. You would have described yourself as a teenager as being quite introverted. And I think, for just to give the guys in my group a bit of background, you've done a TED Talk where you spoke about choices, which was, I suppose, extremely powerful. So I suppose describe what it was like being that introverted teenager, and then what pushed you towards running that first marathon. I think was it the first weekend in September 2010 was your first marathon around Dingle. So describe what was going through your head at that time, being that introverted teenager, where you felt like everyone else was making the choices for you, and this was your launch pad to where you are now.
Yeah, it's like, it's the more I look back at it and the more I think about it and stuff, I'm like, how did I end up here? Like what made me decide to do something like that? And it was very random. Like I suppose, Barry, we would have become quite friendly when we were down in Cork, But I was completely lost. I had no direction at all. At the time I met you, I did. I had obviously goals and plans and business goals and stuff like that. But at the time, man, I suppose, look, I was a normal young lad. I was lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was, I suppose, trying to fit into the ideal system that young lads do in Ireland. It's go to school, go to college, get a job, and that's kind of it. And I just knew that wasn't for me. But I still continue to kind of conform and just, I suppose, fit into the system and things like that. And I'm not saying, look, I'm not trying to glorify people dropping out of college and stuff like that. I that's never my intention, but it was my decision. I remember this clear as day, being in a lab above in UL in Limerick, and going in there for nearly an hour and literally looking at a man up the top of the room, and I had no idea what that man said for the whole hour. And it's not that I was stupid or I just couldn't get it, but I was just like, I wasn't in the right place. And I suppose, I was looking for something. I was looking for something to fulfill me. And the more I think about it, that first marathon did it not it maybe it didn't fulfill me, but it definitely made me start questioning things. It made me ask some more questions about myself, and it started making me realize that there's more to the world and there's more happening in the world than you. And I think, look, when you're that age, you are very self-centered, you are very self-focused, and you do just think that it's just your world that exists. But I got an awful land, and I'll never forget that whole. I'm really glad I made that decision to run that first marathon, because I honestly think if I didn't, I don't know where I'd be. I don't know what I'd be doing, and that worries me. So I'm glad I made that decision, and then to go from there, I suppose, to doing what I do now. It's polar opposite. I mean, if I was 16, 17 years old and you told me that I was going to be speaking at ESB International headquarters in Dublin to 500 head staff from all over the world, I would have. I reckon I would have ran the opposite way and just kept going until I just never wanted to do anything like that ever. And I suppose I became so comfortable in what I was doing, as in in a good way. I became, I knew this is now my new normal. Obviously, I did the old science route in Limerick, didn't work out. I'd say 4 or 5 years past, Barry, I still was like, this is not going to be my career. Do you know what I mean? I was like, I got to do something properly, So, but now look, when you fast forward, I suppose I've just become I've become more confident in myself through running, and it's made me realize that two things that, you know, I can do something for myself. Like, you know, Barry, from a team sports perspective, right? I would have been playing football at, we say, a relatively high enough level with Dingle. I knew that even if I had a good day, that the team might lose, and you know, but if I had a bad day, and the team might still win, but I could be propped up by the 14 other lads in the field. Like if I had a bad day, or might have made a few bad decisions, we might still win. But I can tell you, 21 miles into my first marathon, there was no one else there. There was literally nobody on the road. The first one was in Round Head and Dingle, and there's nobody there anyway. So it opened up my eyes to saying, you know, you're not as tough as you think you are. And you know, this is really something I suppose I was looking for. Now I stayed playing football for quite a while afterwards, and I made the decision myself in the end, because Dingle's a great, fantastic club, and I actually ended up going back there a couple of years later, training the club, which was really great for me. But the way the kind of the county setup works in Kerry is, you know, during the summer, obviously the Kerry lads are playing football with the county, and the club lads are playing football with the club. And when the All Ireland finishes, you know, the club players are under a bit more pressure because the county lads are coming back from the All Ireland or whatever. And that was very prevalent in Dingle because we had so many fellas playing with Kerry. And I went probably, you know, from starting a lot of the year to go traveling the whole county on the bench all day, every day. Not like, I'm not saying that was, you know, but I was like, I'd love to be running now. That was kind of my mindset. I wasn't like upset because I wasn't playing. I was like, I'd love to be at home now, like running up and down each beach, like, do you know what I mean? So the decision was, it was a natural enough one for me. And obviously the trainings, they're complete and polar opposite to each other as well. So that's, look, a decision I made. I suppose then the fitness business stuff started coming. That made me a little bit more, come out of myself a little bit more as well. And I just became, and you know, I became a good communicator, Barry. But I had to learn how to do it. I had to really teach myself. I would have been like quite a shy young fella. I would have been very within myself. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
to kind of bring myself to that level, it took time and it took effort. I'd say that was nearly harder than all the endurance stuff early on, was to kind of almost like nearly change my personality to
Yeah.
match what I was trying to do. But you know what? The more I realized, and the more I've gone through the last couple of years, and even up until recently across in America, it's not, it's just, if you be yourself, people actually relate to that a lot more, you know. So it's been an interesting journey. And do you know what? Like, it's been 10 years since I ran that first marathon, or started training for that first marathon. And you know, I still feel like I'm just starting. Like, I still feel like I'm just starting out, and it's. I hope that feeling never goes, because it keeps me curious. It keeps me curious about training, about what I can do, what I can achieve, but it also keeps me excited because I'm kind of like I get bored very easily, Barry. So if I'm doing something, and that sounds strange for like an ultra
Mm.
marathon runner to say, like running for hours, and like I get bored, but it's also my way of kind of switching off. I mean, from a business perspective, I come up with all my good ideas for work when I'm out running, you know, or if I'm away for, like, I could pack my bag on a Sunday, my little backpack with my water, and I could just tell the family, look, I could be back anytime between 11 and 2. Like, what time is dinner? You know, I'll definitely be back for that. So, and like that for me is like really exciting. It just gives me a lot of freedom, and it just lets me kind of express who I am. And I suppose I've attracted certain people then around that. I don't know if persona is the right word, but I've just, my personality, I suppose, I've attracted, you know, my ideal clients quite easily. I've got involved with some fantastic projects quite naturally, you know, and I think that's come from just me being myself and just enjoying what I do, you know. So kind of a bit of a roundabout answer, but it's an interesting story. But it's like,
Yeah.
the more I think back about it, the more I look at it, I'm like, how did I end up here? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think, Shane, a lot of anyone who's successful, they have to have substance behind them, you
Yeah,
know, and they obviously have a strong, I suppose, confidence, but they've also a stronger why and a stronger reason. So I'm going to just pick your brain on this. I think a fundamental part of your why and why you do what you do comes back to your relationship with your cousin Mary. And I could be
mm-hmm.
completely wrong on that. And if I am, geez, enlighten me. But what's your why? Like, what gets you out of bed in the morning? Like, what is driving Shane Finn to accomplish all these amazing feats? Because they are amazing. They're, I suppose, what I said to my group is, fitness should be the celebration of what the body's capable of achieving. You know, it
Absolutely.
shouldn't be anything that's on social media or any, look at me, I'm great.
Yeah.
It should be just a celebration of what the body's capable of, and what you've done, obviously has been celebrated, but it just shows what is achievable by the body. So what's the why behind Shane Finn?
It's actually it's a double-edged sword, and it's taken me up until very recently to actually personally figure this out for myself. Number one is my cousin Mary. That's number one. So she was the reason I decided to run my first marathon, because when we were growing up, so Mary's from my mom's side of the family, will say, we were growing up, we would have been the eldest of the kids, and I suppose even from when I was a child, like I'm talking 5, 6 years old, I knew that Mary was different, and that like we'd be, family gatherings, we'd be outside in the garden playing football, and like, but Mary would just be there watching us, and she couldn't get involved and stuff like that. And the more I think back, even from a very, very young age, I was always conscious, to try and involve her, or, to asking her, was she okay? And I was only 5 or 6 years old, But I suppose then as I grew up, I realized that, her condition was really quite severe. I mean, she's now kind of, for quite some time now, she's been kind of fully kind of wheelchair bound, and she can't really do anything for herself. So, I suppose when I was 18, I had what I thought was the whole world at my feet, and I thought I had everything figured out and sorted. And in reality, I didn't, But I suppose from that point on, doing that first marathon, two things. Obviously, remember I was saying I suffered a lot myself, and it opened up my eyes. But I also remember crossing the finish line and seeing that girl's face and how happy she was. I don't know, was she happy that I finished, or happy that I was in a lot of pain? One or the other, but it made her really happy either way. And you know what? I remember chatting to her that evening, like, and she goes, you could do another one. And I was just like, and there was me thinking, like, I just finished this marathon that I never did really train for. I was supposed to play football in like next Wednesday night, and I was like, I can't even stand up straight. And then she was just, she's always kind of funny, and she's like, sure, why don't you do another one? And I had just raised under 10 grand for charity at that time in that first marathon, all locally in Dingle. Just, I literally would get into my car and like knock on people's doors and like say, I'm going to run a marathon. There, will you give me a few pound? Like, when you think about it, like, it was mad. But what I then saw, as I became more invested in it, and I became more invested in fundraising, I began to see what an impact it had on Mary, and not from a financial perspective. What it did was it made me realize how actually severe her condition was, and how actually hard she finds things. And I always bring it back to one moment. It was the Christmas of 2015-16. And at the time, we had the gym and all that kind of stuff. And my business partner in the gym was actually also Mary's first cousin, but from the other side. So it's a nice little connection. And, I remember meeting one of Mary's doctors just by chance. They happened to be on a family weekend away in between Christmas and the New Year in Dingle. And he said, you're the runner? And I said, yeah, I am. Yeah. And, he said, she talks about you all the time and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, that's great. And, my family kind of, and then his kids ran, he said to me on the QT, he said, look, I'm not too sure if you know, but that girl feels the feeling of pain 24 hours a day. And I like, that was one of those moments in my life. It was kind of like, we all remember where we were when we heard the news about 9/11 and little things like that. That was one of those moments for me. And I just remember, like, the whole world just opened up and like just swallowed me. And I was just like, what are you doing, man? Like, you've so much more in you. And like, let's go. Like, what are you doing? And that's where the idea of the 24 marathons came from. And it wasn't just a number. It was 24 hours a day for every hour of the day that somebody suffers. And so from there, I got to know a lot more families around Ireland, a lot more, single moms and stuff that were living in housing estates in Dublin with no help or nothing, and never got involved in the charity before. And they would have seen this stuff online and on the news, and then they got involved and they got some help and things like that. And, and then, it's kind of, you get to a stage then where I did at one stage almost feel obliged to continue doing this kind of stuff, to continue helping people. And I always will. I always will continue helping people. But I suppose what I did understand then was that there was two things happening. That was, say, take America, for example. I was 20 days into crossing America, coughing up blood and like blood streaming down my nose, climbing the Rockies. And I was just, all that was in my head was I have to be in New York on May the 3rd. I said, because it's been Mary's dream since she was a child to go to America. and we got our flights to go to New York, to be in New York for the last day. And literally nothing else mattered to me at that stage. I didn't care. I had sponsor stuff to fulfill. I had all these kind of things going on, and like wrecking my head, like DMing me, like, "Oh, why would you put up a post today?" and stuff. And I was just like, I was half brain dead, and I was like, I have to be in New York on the last day. So when push comes to shove, that's the reason why. And I remember, I'll stop rambling on a sec, but I remember one of the last mornings of the 24 marathons. So we did the 24 marathons, 24 days all around Ireland. And I remember one morning getting out of bed and just looking down at my feet. And I had destroyed the bed inside the hotel. Like, it was white sheets and they were just red everywhere from my feet. And I remember looking down at my feet and saying, how am I going to run a marathon on these feet today? Do you know what I mean? And it was the morning of day 19, and something just clicked in my head, and I was just looked in the mirror in the hotel room, and I said, at least I can get out of bed on my own. You know what I mean? I said, the people I'm doing this for can't get out of bed on their own in the morning. And I said, that's all I need. I said, if I can get out of bed, I can give this thing a shot. And from a mindset perspective, I went on to run my fastest marathon that day. So it was a moment in time where I was completely on my own. There was nobody around me. There was nobody talking to me. There was nobody talking in my ear. None of my crew were there. I was completely on my own. So there are just a couple of the moments I kind of come back to. So obviously, yeah, the will to kind of help my cousin Mary, but deep down as well, there's a double side to it. I just really love pushing myself, and if I can do that and help other people, it's a cool little dynamic. Do you know what I mean? But I suppose my main thing, I suppose, and just to wrap up that answer, is that I've met people over the last couple of years. I had a girl in our support crew during the 24 marathons whose family followed us for the 24 days. Everywhere we went, they did bucket collections and everything. And they were here, they were in our house right here after the 24 marathons. And about 6 months before I crossed America, she passed away in her sleep, you know. So little things like that have made me very grateful for very, very simple things that a lot of us, not everybody, but a lot of us would, and I had in the past, would take for granted, such as getting up in the morning, having a coffee, going for a run, going out for a couple of hours on my bike. We just think that these are just things that you do, like, and I was just like, no, like these are the important things, like, and they're very important for me. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose that just gives a little bit of an insight into it, maybe, but it's definitely definitely interesting, you know. And I suppose I hope I never find out how far I can go, because I was like, that'd be an awful way, like, to end things. You know what I mean? But I want to keep exploring. I want to keep seeing what I can do. Like, the human body is amazing. I've been given a gift of good health, and like I fully intend on using it to the absolute utter max.
That's good. No, it's good to hear, because I suppose, Shane, that ties in with the whole point of bringing you on was mental resilience, and you've kind of started to touch into it. So I suppose when we started this conversation, I wanted you to just talk and let it flow. I didn't want to be interrupting or putting in the questions or anything. So I said, the more talking you do, the better this is going,
Sure.
which is great, because you've been talking, which is great. So we've kind of gone in the direction now to the mental side of it. I'm going to leave, I suppose, your early days in Dingle, where you started from, in the unit beside one of the nicest seafood restaurants in Dingle at the time, with your spinning studio. And then I suppose just give the guys in the group a little bit of background as well. You moved into an even bigger unit again, your own gym and your own facility. What age were you then, Shane?
I was at the time we went into the big place. I was 23 years old with 120 grand loan over my head. So they were good times. Yeah, they were good times. Yeah.
So for the moms in the group, it's just shows you there, Shane at 23, after dropping out of college, being introverted, 120 grand loan over his head after running his first marathon. It just shows you that if you're worried about your kids, and if your kids drop out of college, don't worry, because some very good things have happened.
I remember one thing, actually. Sorry to cut in there, no worry, but I remember, and this is just, I suppose, because I've been there, and now my little brother he was meant to be doing his leaving cert, but like, I suppose as much of a face as young lads can put on, like, oh, we were okay, we're fine. We used to, like, I used to worry about things, you know what I mean? And I remember the fear of coming home to tell my parents I dropped out of college. I'll never forget it. And I remember my father just turning around to me, and my father's a bit of a character anyway. And I was afraid that he was going to, like, give out to me and say, like, sure, after paying for the year now or whatever, And And I just turned around to him and said, look, I just hate it. It's just not for me. I don't. Not that I hate it. I made some great friends. I think one of your arch nemesis there from Clare was a good buddy of mine, Podge Collins. So like we made some fantastic. I made some fantastic friends there that I'm still friends with to this day. But like what I was there for wasn't for me. And I remember he just turned around. He said, "No, fair play, well done. It was a good decision to make." And he said, "So you're on your own now. You can figure out from here for yourself." And I was just like, what do you mean I'm on my own? He goes, you figure it out now, man. You're on your own from here. And literally he goes, what do you want to do? He's like, I think myself and Mark can make a really good go at this fitness thing. He said, off you go, get it done. He said, you're finished college, go. And I was just like, all right, okay, I better figure this out. So, so sometimes it is just good to let young, like, not have too much control over a young person, just kind of let them. Now, sometimes you have to steer them in the right direction, of course, but sometimes just let them go and figure things out as they go,
Yeah, and go back to your point there, Shane, you made about when I asked you what your why was and your motivation, and taking you back to your marathons, and this is where we're going to delve into the mental resilience side of things.
Sure.
I suppose when you have purpose, as I said, you'll accomplish anything. I can remember meeting you the marathon I did a couple of years ago, and we've a couple of ladies in the group that they did their first marathon as well in Dublin at that time as well. We all just got a notion that we were going to do a marathon that year, and we said we picked Dublin. Yeah, and I remember, as you said, I got to mile 21. My phone had died, Shane, so my map, my run was gone. My miles on heart rate tracker was gone. My music was gone.
Your mind was gone.
Yeah, my head is a washing machine the best of times. So me alone and my thoughts wasn't great. But
yeah.
I remember I was running for my canine companion who supplied dogs to autistic kids. So that's like you said there. That was all that was in my head. Was like, just finish. This is what you're doing it for, and like just you summon just this inner strength to get it done. But I suppose to delve into your side of it, Shane, like 2014, 12 and 12 days, 12 marathons, 12 days, 2016, 24 and 20 and 24 days, 36 days across America. Like that's tough going on the mind, especially.
Yeah.
Like I've read a quote before from David Goggins. He said like that when you feel like you're done and there's no more left in the tank, you're only 40% of the way there. You know that there is that extra 60% there. So, like, describe to me those moments, especially I suppose the 12 and 12 days you were talking about your feet there, you know, and you're covered in blood, destroyed. Like, and I suppose you've already explained about the purpose there. But like, when you close the doors there in the evening, like people see Shane, they're putting up the progress photo, Shane smiling, thumbs are up, you know. But like, talk to me there when that door closes, like, what's going on in your head, like.
Yeah. I suppose I suppose what people see and what I actually see through my eyes are very, very different sometimes. Do you know what I mean? I suppose mentally, like I do believe that a lot of the things I do are very much so, yeah, they're physical, but they're also massively, massively mental as well. I remember distinctively during the 12, which is my first kind of multi-day step into the ultra world, really, I remember like not being able to walk properly and sitting in my hotel room that night and being like, how, like, I have to run another marathon tomorrow. Like, how am I going to do this? Do you know what I mean? And I said, look, just get out of bed in the morning, have a breakfast, and just take it from there. And it sounds so simple, but I remember that moment, and I was like, then I was running the 24 marathons, the 24 days, and I was like, do you remember that morning during the 12 when you thought you weren't going to be able to run another marathon, but you could? So little things like that. I suppose I'm always trying to. I wouldn't say I compare myself to what I was in the past, but I would compare myself from levels of fitness and things like that, and that would massively help. Like I would do things where, little things like I remember one thing I put in place during the 24 marathons was we had the route planned out, and I'm not sure how people's geography is here, but there's a road from West Cork, or sorry, yeah, West Cork in Glengariff to Kenmare over the mountain. It's called the Caha Pass, and it's the second highest mountain pass in Ireland that you can drive. But I was on foot, so it was day 20 of the 24 marathons, and I remember planning it out and all that kind of stuff. And I remember that in my head, all I was thinking of, you'd think it'd be the last day, but all I was thinking as it was day 20, because I said, if I'm in good enough shape on day 20, I said I'm going to run up the Car Pass. It's just under 12k, and I ran up it in 51 minutes. Like I was bombing. Like I went all out to the top because I was like, it was the only point I said, because from there on, people were going to be with me. So I was running like just over 4 minute Ks going up this mountain. And I was just like, this is my last time, because the last couple of days it was coming into Kerry, so I was going to be nearly home, and there was going to be like 20 people with me the next day. It was my last day alone, and I just wanted to see what was in there, you know. But it's interesting because from a mental perspective, from a training perspective, like I would take America for example, because it's so fresh in my head still. Like I was training for this thing, and usually we train for a marathon or an Ironman or something like that I would usually train for, and it's a day. This thing was over a month in duration, and it's to stay mentally focused for that amount of time is next to impossible. So I literally made it as simple as I could myself. I took it every day as it comes. I did not worry about the next day. I did not like hold back on one day because the next day is hilly and stuff like that. I just did my best on that day. When that day is done, close the book, move on to the next one. What have we got today? Now we had the route planned out and stuff like that, but I literally broke it down to a micro level. I kept it really, 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 really simple. It was hard. I mean, I do remember, and then we talk about keeping things simple. I remember at one stage in America, again, kind of around, we had gone past halfway, and I was, the old novelty had kind of worn off at this stage that I was crossing a continent and stuff. And I remember telling myself one day, and it was pouring rain, and I just had this moment in my head. I was like, if I keep moving, America will run out of land. I was like, that's genius. I was like, if I keep moving, America will run out of land and I'll get to the water again. And I remember just literally the crew pulling up beside me, and I was just there laughing on the bike. And they were like, what are you laughing at? And I just shouted in the window in the pouring rain. I said, if I keep moving, America will run out of land. And that moment, I just knew I had the whole. That was it. They might have just brought me to New York because I had won at that stage, and I did the same thing again when I got to the state of New York. Bear Mountain is the last mountain that I had to really kind of climb, and I said, anybody who does any bit of cycling, I said, if I can get to Bear Mountain on that second last day in relatively good shape, I'm going to climb it in the big ring on my bike, which is completely and utterly stupid. But I decided that that'd be my little kind of, because the second last day and the last day, I'm going to have a load of people with me. But I just wanted that, because the mountains has given me such a bad time, like over the previous. I said, I want to go out and I want to win the last one, So it was, yeah, I mean, like people think that, I have all these secret methods and whatnot, and I don't. I just keep it really simple. I take it 1 kilometer at a time, 1 mile at a time, one chunk at a time, one signpost at a time. And I have a similar quote. Maybe I saw it from David Goggins and I reworded it myself or something. But I remember like thinking to myself, my father said to me one day, we're in America, we're in the desert, and he said, "Geez, you really emptied the tank today." And I remember saying, like, I said, if I can choose to believe that now if I want, but I know myself I've got more in the tank. Like I did not empty the tank today. And I remember saying our plan was that, if there was any evening, and I might have particularly felt really good, that after dinner I'd go out again and maybe take a chunk out of the next morning or something like that. And that day that I was told that, oh, you're great, you emptied the tank today, that was the day I chose to go back out and do another 35k I did that night on the bike. Because I was like, you can believe what other people think you want to think, but unless you believe it yourself, I think that's the main thing. Because I'd spent months training around West Kerry in the wind and the cold and the hills and the bumpy roads and like just pure misery, and now I was actually in this thing and I could actually leave a mark on it and just remember it for the rest of my life. And I would obviously think about day on day, like, did I give yesterday a good go, or like, could I have done more, or could I push a bit harder yesterday? So I'd be constantly thinking about all that kind of stuff. And it's interesting because all the mental resilient things and stuff like that you can come up with. I mean, I struggle with self-doubt just like everybody does. Like everybody has struggles with self-doubt. Even the most confident people in the world are doubt themselves sometimes, and I came up with one very, very, very simple tip and trick that I used in America. I came up with it on the spot. I didn't even have this thing planned before I went. Was I understood that I couldn't be high-fiving and happy and woo every day, so because I'm a human. So I knew that there were some days I wouldn't be feeling great. And so what I would do is I would let the self-doubt start, and I would let the negative self-talk start. But I'd look at my watch or my Garmin on my bike, and I would say 5 minutes. So I was allowed 5 minutes to say whatever I wanted to myself, or to what there was nobody else really to talk to whatever anybody else I wanted to say into, I could say it to them. But once as my 5 minutes were up, I would look at the clock and I'd name 5 things I was grateful for. And now this exercise could have been completed 3 or 4 times an hour, like depending on the day, depending how the day was going. And my things I could have been grateful for were: just had a nice coffee, it's sunny, I've got a tailwind, I'm another day closer to New York, I slept well last night. It could be as basic as anything. But I can tell you that would just completely change my whole mind shift. And it's hard to I suppose wrap your head around that. Like, if you're in mile 21 of the Dublin City Marathon and you're like, oh, it's sunny today and I get to have a pint there soon and my dinner after that, and it's hard, but I just had to put something in place because I knew I'm human and that I would struggle with self-doubt at points. But I think you can let it in. You can't fully block it out, but I can let it in, and when it comes in, I can deal with it from that point. So I mean, I'm still learning like the mental resilience stuff, and it's interesting because I think ultimately behind it all, the thing that gives me most mental strength on the Golden Gate Bridge, heading to Brooklyn Bridge, is I've got the work done. And if I've got the work done, I can give this thing a really good shot. And I know deep down in myself, other people might say, "Oh, you're in great shape, like you're doing massive training and stuff like that." But unless I know it myself, and when I look at it myself, and I look at myself in the mirror and tell myself, "You can do more," or "You've got great training done. You're in great shape. You're sleeping well. You're eating well. Big training volume. You're good to go." So it comes down to like the person themselves and just being honest with yourselves as well. And when you do the work, I find you're a lot more mentally resilient.
Yeah, and like I suppose to tie it back to the mental resilience side of it, Shane, into a fitness and group dynamic. I suppose a lot of our group are memmies,
Yep.
so as you can imagine, no, between time constraints, the new norm, as people are calling it, being at home with kids, working from home,
Sure.
having small people vying for their attention every 20 minutes and just trying to look after kids, trying to work, trying to get exercise in, the whole lot. We have a lot of new people in the group as well that are starting off in their journey. I'll give you an example. We've one lady in the group. She's a nurse in the regional in the hospital, and she
Cool.
always says, very first day that I arrived into her class, she said, I stayed near the door because all I wanted to do was run out halfway through it. She hadn't exercised in years.
Yeah.
Yeah, she hadn't exercised in years. So this is her first day. It was a scary time for her.
Yeah.
But in fairness, she's come back. She's come back 3 years in a row. Like, she's lost over 3.5 stone. Like, completely changed her life.
Mm.
But tying back into the mental resilience side of it, Shane, I suppose motivation is cyclical. It's not something you can rely on all the time.
Mm.
But for people that are starting, I suppose, like, what tips and advice would you have from not to listen to that negative voice in their head,
Yeah.
to keep ingraining these new habits, to come back and keep trying something, even though they might be really good at it now and it might scare them. But what bit of advice could you give to people to help with I suppose, their confidence and their resilience?
Yeah, I suppose for me, and it's hard now, Barry, because you touched on it there maybe before we started recording or just when we started recording, was like now with the fitness, everything is fast, everything's quick, everything's like 21 days, 14 days, 7 days. And like, like one hot day doesn't make a hot summer, or Rome wasn't built in a day, but it didn't fall down in a day either. Do you know what I mean? So I always try and encourage people to make sure that they think long term, and that's a hard thing to sell. That's a hard thing to ingrain into people's mind. However, you just have to understand that playing the kind of longer game and prioritizing things like your own health, your own mental health, and your own well-being, and the fitness stuff will come. And there's a couple of things I suppose here, right? You could definitely, I think sometimes people are both too easy on themselves and both too hard on themselves. And I see both quite a lot. And both obviously are quite different, but the person always knows themselves. The person will tell you, if you get to know somebody, they'll tell you if they're being too easy on themselves or if they're being too hard on themselves. You can really tell by their personality. But what I would recommend people to do is just to try your best to be as organized as you can. everybody's busy. We're all busy. Maybe not as busy these days, but there's 168 hours in the week, okay, for everybody, no matter where you are or what you're doing at the moment. And it's a great tip. Anybody I work with, I get them to fill this out at least once. 168 hours in a week. You can surely fit a couple of 45-minute workouts or a couple of 30-minute runs and stuff in there. No problem at all. I suppose one thing is not to get too hung up on, from a runner's perspective, we get very tied to programs. We can be chained down to certain sessions and stuff like that. And I've fallen into that trap many, many times. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I remember at one stage, like literally training for Ironmans and not being at home like all day Saturday and Sunday because I was just out training all the time, and that's not good either. Do you know what I mean? There has to be balance there. So what I would recommend people doing is try building your fitness into your schedule. It should suit you. Fitness should be a bit of a celebration of things you can do, and every session is a win, especially if you're a busy mom. I mean, look, there are days you're going to miss it, but if there's a chance that you might miss your session on that day, that's fine. That's okay. What you can do in that day is you can be as good as you can with your food, and you get a session in the next day. You know what I mean? So I would not get too beat up and on yourself about missing a session, things like that. I mean, long-term change comes from when you're really consistent, when you're consistently good instead of being occasionally perfect. That's what I always try to get people to think about as well. I mean, I think that's applicable, Barry, like from a running perspective, obviously from coaching stuff, but also from a fitness. We'll say if somebody's goal it's not running, it could be fat loss or weight loss. Rather than just being perfect on Monday and Tuesday, and then the rest of the week is a bit of a train wreck. Like, why don't you work really hard and be really good from Monday to Saturday, and then maybe kicking things back a little bit on Sunday or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So, and there's being consistent with that. So I suppose it's different for everybody, but I would try to find out what works for you from a time management perspective. For busy moms, I do find early in the morning is key. If you get out early in the morning, great, or late in the evening. I find early in the mornings better because then you get to go to sleep maybe shortly after the kids go to sleep that night, and you still have a bit of time to yourself in the morning as well. And just look at it as a bit of you time. I think that's crucial as well because we're all busy. We've all got stuff going on. Everything is stressful, especially now. And just taking that 40 minutes to go for a walk, go for a run, go for a cycle, go for a swim, just make sure to look after yourself as well. Because the more you look after yourself, the more you can look after other people. I could keep talking all day on that topic.
I didn't want to disturb you because it's great, Shane, because I suppose we're very similar minded in philosophies and approach. And I think the word you used there, and I'm going to bring it back, is balance. I think balance is so crucial. As I said, that and it's actually funny you say it, our group is actually called the Early Risers Group, because we start,
great.
We're a 6 a.m. start. Even in these times, we're still a 6 a.m. start, 3 mornings a week, so it's great. But yeah, bring it back to balance. Like, I think if fitness takes over your life, especially for the busy moms and dads in the group, and you're starting to worry about, as you said, what you're eating down to the last nibble, starting to worry about your session if you're not, if you're not getting the sessions in, and fitness starts to dictate, that's when just people become overwhelmed. That's when they fall off the wagon. That wagon that's been patched up with plasters and tape and everything, super glue at this stage. And I think that sense of balance is great. But just bringing back to what you said, Shane, about the quick fixes. I suppose it's a sign of the way the fitness industry has gone in a way, that everyone's looking for that solution and that quick fix. And I think the ironic thing is there's no quick fix, it actually just...
It is the ironic thing, yeah.
Further, so I suppose how would you view fitness at the moment, for the busy moms and dads? Like, what you've already given a few tips and advice there, about balance and playing the long-term game, but like, what would you suggest to people at the moment, or how would you view the fitness industry towards moms and dads? Like, do you think that it's that's just lulling people into a false sense of playing on emotions, or is it?
It's an interesting one, Barry, and I'm glad you brought it up because I had a similar conversation with I have a group in New York at the moment who are all moms. The whole group is moms, and like they get very caught up in what we'll say the bloggers and the influencers and stuff are doing. Do you know what I mean? I just find that I find it, I would look at things like social media as entertainment platforms. I wouldn't be, I would trust your coach and your PT and your fitness instructor and your gym owner. I would trust them a lot more than I would trust somebody online. I mean, if you're investing in them financially, they should be your trusted source. Do you know what I mean? Whether it be, for running or for fat loss or for early morning sessions, like that's your person, that's your guy or your girl. Where it's going to go, I honestly think, Barry, and I know we're live here, but I think it's going to come back to just the authentic guys and girls who are coaches. The cream will always rise to the crop. It's even funny to see from when myself and yourself did our course around then, who the big guys and girls in the fitness industry were then. I don't really see them now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
obviously,
my
yeah.
goal, my goal, right? My goal with my business and with my stuff is that in 5 or 6 years' time, I still want to be around. I still want to be relevant. I still want to be providing people with value. I still want to be helping people run their first 5K or their first Ironman or their first marathon. And that stuff, it's authentic. It's real. You see what you see is what you get. And I think as well, if you're honest, if you're authentic, and if you try and help people, that will shine through. Sometimes I do get very annoyed with certain things I see, and they would have really provoked me in the past. Whereas now I'm just like, unless it's got anything to do with me, my family, the charity work, or my clients, I'm not interested. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I mean, look, it's hard because then at the same time you also want to better the industry. You want to like, you want to leave it in a good place, and you want to set a benchmark. And I think that's hard to do too, because you might have guys and girls with, maybe they've got a big budget and they can put a heap of money behind their Instagram, or they can buy a lot of followers or something like that. And it's hard because then, how do you prove yourself to be a reputable source? One of my biggest mentors for everything, from an endurance standpoint, from a business standpoint, everything, he doesn't even have social media. Do you know what I mean? And he's one of the smartest guys I know. So it's hard. It's hard, and I just think that, I would always encourage people to take a small step back from it. It's great for business, and it's great for community building, and all that kind of stuff. And I've met some fantastic and phenomenal people through social media, but I've also met a couple of lunatics. Do you know what I mean? And it's trying to find that balance of who do you trust. And when I take myself back and I put myself into maybe, one of your members' shoes, and I sit there, I'm like, right, well, everybody's saying something, and like, who do I listen to? Do you know what I mean? So, I would listen to you. I would listen to me. People, like normal people that are doing normal things.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I'm not like, I'm not trying to sell anybody a dream. I'm not trying, what you see is what you get. And it's like, hey, listen, if you want to come on board and you want to work really hard for 20 weeks, yeah, I can help you do a marathon. But then you have somebody online with 1 million followers saying you can lose 10 pounds in 2 days by doing this. And I'm just like, well, it's up to you.
Yeah.
Whatever you think yourself, so it's
That's
hard.
good
But I
advice,
think, look,
man.
if we just keep doing the right thing, we keep helping people, I think that'll rise to the top as we go.
No, good answer. Shane, I know you're half time now as well, so I'm going to
No
finish
worries,
off the
mate.
questions. But I suppose just because you're a runner, and we've a lot of aspiring runners in the group as well, a lot of people that are very, very interested in running, to be fair, and a lot of people that are interested in getting into running. So I suppose, what advice would you have firstly for the people that are starting off? You don't have to go into too much detail. And what advice would you have for the people that are kind of middle distance now, they maybe have a marathon done, that are kind of saying to themselves, geez, I don't know if I could do another one, but they really have the itch to do another one. Like, I'd love
Yep.
to do another one again, but I know myself
Yep.
that, like you with your first one, I trained for a week and a half and it was absolute lunacy.
Yeah, I wouldn't. It's funny. I was like, I would never ever recommend somebody to do that. That's the way I got into it. But yeah, no, great question. I think for starting out, it's people kind of think I'm repeating myself. It's be patient. It's like a lot of things with fitness. Like you have to. It's like planting a seed and like planting a plant, and like you have to wait for it to grow. You need to water it. You need to give it time. You need to leave it alone for a couple of days, and then you'll see it blossom after time. But the thing is as well, right, with running, and from a physiology standpoint, we all adapt in different ways. Like you might have somebody who might, do 4 weeks of training and they're ready to do a 5K. But then you might also have their best friend who they run with. That person might need 6 weeks, or that person might need 5 weeks, or so we're all a little bit different. So it's funny because I would have given a 0 to 5K program out for free over the last month or so. And one of the points in it was like, listen, if you feel like you need to repeat a week, please repeat a week. Like, this is not it's not a step-by-step program. Repeat a week if you feel like you need to repeat a week, or drop back a week. It doesn't matter. You can do it over 7 weeks. So take your time. I think as well, and this is coming from somebody I was hoping to this year to kind of start competing in Ironmans like at a higher level, and this is also applicable for me, but also for people who are starting out and people who are middle distance, maybe looking at doing another marathon or something like that, is you have to enjoy it. No matter what you're doing, whether it be classes with you at 6 a.m. in the morning, like as I guarantee you, Barry, like as much as people suffer in those, they still have fun. You still enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? And that's why people keep coming back. And that's why, at the end of the day, I've seen online running coaches come and go over the last 10 years, and they just don't really enjoy what they're doing, and they don't actually love it themselves. So I think from if you're stepping up in distances, and maybe you're like, oh, I don't know, and stuff like that, I wouldn't push it. I would, get back running, get into a bit of routine, maybe do a couple of local races when they come back, please God. And, surround yourself with people that are trying to do something similar. I think that's really key. So if you've got a couple of, ladies here in the group who, maybe they want to do a marathon together next year, train together, go for social runs together, go for coffee after together, and make running part of your lifestyle rather than it's something you're training for. Because, rather than making it a 12-week program, why don't you make it a 52-week program that you just do all the time? It's part of your lifestyle, it's part of your identity. I find that a lot easier to maintain rather than, looking at things in blocks of time. Now, that is, don't get me wrong, it's also really important to block things off in time and train appropriately and periodize things around your life and what you've done. But it's also important to kick things back a little bit as well. And you shouldn't constantly be trying to, I suppose, push all the time. It's important that you enjoy it. So no matter if you're starting off 0 to 5K, starting off 0 to marathon, my main tips are enjoy it and don't be worried about it. Just take it nice and easy. Allow yourself time to adapt. If you feel good, go for it. If you feel like you need to take a rest day, take a rest day and have fun. They're my main tips.
Good. I think that brings us into our last question, Shane, which was some great advice there. But I suppose the whole, as I said, and I'm repeating myself, the whole point of the talk is about mental resilience. So I'm going to take you back into day 10 of the 36 days across America. Your Achilles has started to flare. I suppose this is where the self-doubt, the negative voices, and as you said, anyone that's a high-performing sports person who is normally riddled with self-doubt anyway, and insecurities. So I suppose from a mental resilience point of view, and I suppose we're looking for a tip here for my guys that they might be struggling at the moment with motivation, they might be struggling saying, why am I doing this? What's the point? So I'm going to get you to take me back to day 10. Achilles is flared up. Your whole trip is on the line. Your whole journey is on the line. What were you telling yourself to get through that moment?
That day 10 gives me almost PTSD, because I remember. Here's the funny story before getting into the serious part. That I remember before I flew to Boulder in Colorado to do some high altitude training before I crossed America, just to get my lungs adapted, if I could anyway. And I remember saying to an Irish lad out there that I never in my life had an Achilles injury. I've had every other injury under the sun, but I've never had an Achilles injury. What's the first thing that pops up when I'm crossing America, right? Murphy's Law, yeah. So I remember feeling my calf. So just to give some context, right? I left California on the first day. It was at sea level. From day 2 to day 9, I climbed on the bike, like up the Sierra Nevadas, heading towards the Rockies. So it was elevation gain every day. I was going up and up and up over these mountains. And I suppose to make the biomechanics of cycling quite simple, climbing, your calf's very involved in the climbing part and the power production part of a pedal stroke. And my calf was a bit tender after day 8. I was like, that's strange. I've never really felt that before, because I was standing a lot on the bike because it was quite hilly and, and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, day 9 came. It was still a bit tight, and I was like, "This is strange." It was like right in the belly of my calf, creeping down a little bit, and I was like, "That's that." I said if I can get running, maybe it'll loosen out a bit. And I was due to run on day 11. Next thing, day 10 comes. I climb up another massive pass, and I just pull over on the side of the road. And my physio Ali was with me, and I knew myself in the 45 minutes building into this. I turned around to her and I said, "I have a question for you." And she looks at me dead in the eye in the middle of nowhere, and she goes, "What are you going to say?" I said, "If I tear my Achilles," I said, "and continue, am I going to do permanent damage?" And she just looked me in the eye. She said, "Yes, you will." And I just said, "Right, okay, we've got two options." I said, "I stop now today and I rest and go tomorrow, or we do a session now. You tell me what you think, because you're the professional and I'm just going to take your word for it." And she goes, "We're going with option B." She said, "I'm the professional. I'm going to tell you what to do." So I said, "Fair enough. That's why I asked you to come." So we did a session on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere in Nevada. And she said, it's just flared up. It's just inflamed. And we had a very, very frank conversation between the two of us. And she said, "Shane, the whole dynamic of this trip has just changed." She said, "If that tears," she said, "you're going to be in a lot of trouble." She said, "You won't even be able to put on your shoe, not a mind pedal a bike or run." So just for context, again, I was cycling up to 250k per day. That's from Dingle to Thurles. And I was kind of running about 50k a day, so the days were long, they were heavy, they were big volume. And I still had over 3 weeks to go. And look, at the time, I remember going to bed that night being like, there's a reason that we had some airports kind of pinned on the map that if things didn't work out, this is where we'd fly home from. Because it was a very, very real in my mind that there was a huge chance I might not finish this. And I just thought from a fundraising perspective and things like that, I had to have a plan B in place. But Ali woke me up that morning at about 5:30 the next morning, and she said, "Get up! We need to do another session to see how your Achilles is." And it had actually improved. It had improved overnight. I took some anti-inflammatories. I actually went to sleep with it wrapped in an ice pack. And we did another session at 5:30 in the morning. I went back into bed for an hour. I ate my breakfast. We did another session before I started cycling, and it wasn't too bad. But at the end of the day, again, it was still very inflamed, and we had another conversation. I was like, "Ali, like I'm not going to be able to run for 2 years after this." And she said, "Well, give me one more day." She said, "Give me one more day." And at the time, I was very, very doubtful. I was like, I could cycle, but I couldn't push power. I'm a fairly, I'm small, I'm wiry. Like I love climbing on the bike, and I couldn't climb hard. And that's where I was making time, was climbing. And I knew that running would be quite painful. But you know what? Lo and behold, over kind of the third day, the fourth day, the fifth day, and I actually got to day 23. And day 23 was the first day that they didn't have my ankle like heavily, heavily strapped. I had one little bit of KT tape up the back of my Achilles. And you know what? I suppose I had to do two things. I had to take it day by day. I had to take it hour by hour, but I also had to trust my physio. I built up a very, very good relationship with her over the last year, building into it. And I remember putting it out there on social media saying, "Hey, look, I'm going doing this crazy thing. I need a physio willing to perhaps come with me." And she was the first person to come back to me. And she was like, "Is it still available?" I was like, "Well, you're the first to put your name in the hat." And so we met up, and she was like, "I think as a physio, I'd love to do something like this." I was like, "Can you commit to the whole thing?" And she could, and that was it. So I trusted her massively. I had another thing as well. I lost all the feeling in these three fingers in my left hand. It was just a trapped ulnar nerve. And I remember when that happened, saying like, "So Ali, how do you think this is going to work out?" And she was like, "About a month after you go home, the feeling will come back in your hand." Lo and behold, about a month after I came back, all the feeling came back in my hand. And you know what? I think if it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't have made it, because she had a steady head. She was very professional. She was obviously a very close friend, but she knew exactly what she was doing. And you obviously, look, I was straddling the line of it being a bit dangerous. I remember my dad asking me, he was saying like, "Shane, look, you're going to put yourself out for a long time if you keep pushing this thing." And I said, "Look, she's a professional." She said I could keep going. And it was hard, man. Like I remember actually having a conversation with myself saying, "Geez, it'll be a sickener to go home." Do you know what I mean? And I was just like, "Look, we'll take it and see how you're in the morning." there was a lot of we'll see how it is in the morning moments. I can tell you that, but I just had to take it day by day and not get worried about trying to get to New York on the last day, but get worried about, all right, how can I recover now and how can I show up as best I can for the next morning, you know.
And Shane, I think on that note, we're going to leave it there because I think you've given us a great insight on what goes on inside in someone's head and doing.
Yeah, I don't know.
swimming
Maybe
like that.
people think I'm a bit mad, but it's good. It's good crack.
No, I'd say people are thinking it's mad. No, we've actually Pilates session coming up now, Shane. So I think people are thinking it's a bit mad that they're going literally from one thing to another. That they're after giving me 2 hours of their evening. But no, Shane,
Grand.
from the bottom of my heart, thanks a million for coming on board and just giving an insight into what goes on, I suppose, inside the head of an endurance athlete and even an entrepreneur and of course a person as well. You know that people forget that behind it all there's a person there too. So Shane, thanks a million for everything. Really appreciate it, and hopefully in the future we'll get you back in again just to give impart some more wisdom on us.
More than welcome, Barry. Thanks very much,
Sure.
man. Much appreciated, and hope you all enjoy your next leg of the session. Thanks for having me,
Cheers.
man. Much appreciated.
Cheers, lad. Talk to you later.
Mind yourself. See you soon.
Bye. No. Shane, thanks a million, lad.
No worries, buddy. It was great.
Appreciate that.